folks, Bluesboyjag here with yet another cigar box guitar review. Except it's a amplifier review. It's the Roland MicroCube. This came out originally in 2004 and it was discontinued a few years ago. And I've had several requests over the years to do some reviews on this particular model. So I'm using a 4-string cigar box guitar with a humbucker pickup. This amp is a pretty cool little amp. It's very, very popular. Lots and lots of people are using these on their YouTube channels for cigar box guitar lessons and so forth, and regular guitar too, of course. So let's take a look at this beast here. All right, this is the control panel. You've got a tuner over here. The way this works is you hit the button and it gives you an audio signal, which is, I don't know, in my opinion, a little bit archaic. I'm not quite sure why they have this set up this way instead of a digital tuner. It also has an option to flatten the note a half step. Suppose that might be to tune to a horn or something. I'm not real sure about that. Anyway, that's a little bit of a weird tuning setup, I think, but the tone controls right here, pretty straightforward. You only have one control, however, so it is a little bit limited. Effects, which include the chorus way down here, off of course, and as you slide it up, you've got the flanger over here and a phaser over here and then a tremolo all the way over here, which is pretty cool. You'd be amazed what you can do with that one knob right there. And you've got delay and reverb on this side, so you've got delay as you turn it over and you get to that section there, you're in the reverb section there. Of course, volume, you've got gain. These separate settings here are for the different tones for the amplifier. So it simulates an acoustic guitar, and then you flip it over to the next one and you have the jazz chorus, which is the famous Roland jazz chorus setting. And black panel, not sure what the black panel is for, but I'll give you an example of what it sounds like here in a minute. Brick combo, and you've got your classic, which is, I'm assuming, like a 70s rock and roll kind of a sound. And you've got a rectifier here and then a microphone as well, and of course gain and volume. One input over here on this side, and this is the front of the amp. This is an extremely popular amp, especially for cigar box guitar players. Not sure exactly why it took off in the cigar box guitar world, but it did, and it's still quite popular. You have an aux in, which can be used for a microphone, and it has a record out, and you also have an aux in right there. This is your power and your DC input. It also runs off of AA batteries. I think it takes 6, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look and see. Yep, 6 AA's. And these batteries do last a long time. I've been using this amp for my guitar lessons that I give for, 10 years, I guess. And it's a very handy little amp. And you can go, like I said, directly out into the PA. I've played some gigs where I go directly out of this into my bows, and it sounds pretty darn good. So let's do some demos. Okay, I'm going to start out by going through all the different settings on this amp. So we have an acoustic setting, which simulates an acoustic guitar. You have a jazz chorus clean, which simulates the famous jazz chorus amplifier by Roland, which came out many, many years ago. Black panel, and you've got your Brit combo and your classic stack and a rectifier and a microphone input, so you can sing through it. I'm going to go through all the different settings here. Everything is straight up right now as far as the tone, and I've got a little bit of reverb on, but I'm going to go ahead and turn that off for now. I've got the gain 50% up and the volume 50% up. So on this particular setting, which is acoustic, it's pretty dull. So you have to increase the treble here. Now I'm going to increase the volume here a bit too. So I've got the treble about 90% up. So that's one downside. You can't flip over to your treble setting without leaning over and changing your, your acoustic setting, without leaning over and changing your tone and some other settings on this. I've got my gain up to 50% and the volume up to about 60%. So that's supposed to simulate an acoustic. It's okay. The bass response is pretty, well, pretty lacking, let's just say, on that one. So if I go all the way up with the tone, it doesn't really add a whole lot more. Here's 50% tone. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the gain and the volume all the way up because the volume is really pretty low. Now that sounds more like an electric guitar to me because, of course, I turned the gain up. So, a little bit of a downside there because I have to turn the gain up all the way just to get decent volume, and when I do that, it doesn't sound like an acoustic guitar anymore. So here is the straight up tone and straight up gain, and the volume, believe it or not, is 100%. Not very loud at all. Okay, so that was the acoustic setting. Here's the jazz chorus clean. Much louder. That sounds just like a straight, say, semi-hollow body electric guitar with no effects. Real good sound. Bass response is good. I've got the bass and treble straight up. So that sounds pretty good. Here's the black panel. I'm not sure what this is supposed to emulate. Okay, so still no reverb, but that's going to sound a lot better with the add just a little bit of reverb on it. So that sounds pretty good. I've got my tone straight up, and I'm going to increase it all the way to 200%. That's about what I would have expected, which sounds good to me. And I've got my reverb at about 10%. So let's turn that all the way up. All right, so I'm going to turn the reverb down to about 10%. And the tone is kind of hurting my ears, so I'm going to bring the treble down. Not too bad. So gain is 50%. Volume, believe it or not, is 100%. So this is a pretty low volume amp. It's great for internet use and for YouTube use because the camera grabs that signal and picks it up and amplifies it. For gigs, it's a little bit low, which means for Rock Band, ain't gonna happen at all. But it does have a direct out, so you can go into a bigger PA if you like, which is a really, really good thing. Also, by the way, speaking of that, the settings on the back, or the options on the back, you have an aux in, which would be like another microphone or another guitar or bass or keyboard, and then you have a record out or headphone out, which is very cool for recording. So, and it does come with the option to run it off of batteries or AC. All right, so here is the brick combo. This is my favorite setting on this particular amp. So it's a good overall tone for rock and roll. And I'm going to turn the gain about 50% up. It's got a little bit too much gain for me, so I'm going to turn the volume all the way up and the gain down about 25%. And I'm going to bring the tone down to 50%. There we go. So that's a good overall tone for a rock and roll guitar. I've got my slide here somewhere, so let's go ahead and do a little bit of slide setting on slide playing on this setting. Sounds amazing. I'm going to increase the reverb just a bit and the gain about 20%. All right, I'm going to turn the gain down and the volume all the way up. The gain down about 20%. Now, the bass response on this, of course, is not super great because it's such a small amp. But if you plug it into a PA, especially a Bose, which I've done, it sounds amazing. So that's your brick combo. I like the brick combo because it's not too overdriven. So I'm going to flip over to the classic, which to me is just a little bit too much. That'd be your AC/DC kind of a sound. It increases the volume a good 30% when you flip over to that, which is really weird. Most of the time you don't want that to happen, so that's a little bit of a downside. So if you play, for instance, an assisted living gig, I play a lot of those, and you don't want to bring all your pedals and all that, you don't really need it. It's going to be too loud, right? And you don't want to blow their ears out. Assisted living gigs often have older people there, and they've got hearing aids and they've got those cranked up, so any kind of electric sound is pretty tough on them. So this is going to be a little bit tricky for that kind of a thing. This amp is perfect as far as the portability for an assisted living gig, and it's loud enough. If you plug it into a bigger PA, nothing fancy, maybe $100, $200 PA, then you can tweak it and not be too loud and get a really good tone out of it. Coming straight out of here, out of the amp itself, it's a little tricky. You don't want to be too loud, like I said. You don't want to be too low, and it's a little bit tricky. I played a bunch of cigar box guitar gigs years ago when I bought mine, and it was either almost it was almost so low that no one could hear it, or so high that it was too loud, depending on the venue. I could never quite get it right. It was a little bit tricky. So you might want to invest in a PA to run this into, and you can actually use some of the EQs and the reverb, for instance, on the PA, which does sound better than this, in my opinion. But remember, this is almost 20 years old. And that tone is really good right there. Not too bright for a classic rock sound. I would probably bring down the distortion just a bit for like a Stonesy kind of a deal. Now, one thing about this for slide, it is pretty bright. So in that case, I'm going to turn the tone down about 20%, and I'm going to keep the gain where it's at. That's about where you'd want it for a small venue right there. All right, so we've also got the rectifier, which I've always hated that sound. I mean, I'm sorry, I've never in my lifetime used that at a gig. I just can't stand that sound. But for those of you who use it, oh boy. So tone is at 50%. All right, that's enough of the rectifier. I just really don't like that at all. And the microphone actually gives you pretty good guitar sound. Pretty cool blues sound. You're supposed to, of course, use the microphone in the microphone input there. The cool thing is you can add the gain to the microphone and you get a really cool guitar sound. So if you compare the sounds from this amp, which is about 20 years old, to the more recent cubes, you'll notice that it does sound kind of dated. EQ is a little bit tricky. You only have one knob. You don't have low, mid, and high. The reverb is pretty good. I haven't really cranked up the reverb yet. So I'm going to go back to the Brit combo, which is my favorite. That's the reverb all the way up. This is about 75%. That's a great slide tone right there. So I'm going to turn the gain down to about 25%. That's a pretty good tone right there. Now I can't emphasize enough how well this works if you plug it into a bigger PA. If you have bigger speakers, if you have two, say, speakers about like this with today's PA, it'll give you a nice big fat tone. You have to watch that overdrive though, because it can really make your ears bleed if you're not careful with it. It's a great little home amp too. It's perfect for YouTube videos. There are thousands of people out there who use it for that. Plus, the other thing is that it uses batteries, which is very cool, or you can plug it into AC, either way. And they're very small. I mean, it's no bigger than this cigar box. Of course, it's deeper. So it's probably about, what, 8 inches tall? And the actual box of the amp itself is probably square about this big. So it's not very big. And it's great for jamming with your friends, working on songs, especially late at night. You can use the headphones and you can get a good tone out of it with the speaker itself at a low volume. So have fun with that. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe and check out my website, jagshouse.com. Cigar box guitars just like this one for 20 years. We'll see you later.